Welcome to this peaceful moment. Here, you will discover stories inspired by the quiet beauty of Japan. Each tale is like a soft breeze through a bamboo grove, carrying you away from the worries of the day. Imagine the scent of blooming cherry blossoms and the gentle flow of a nearby clear stream. Let these words and sounds cradle your mind in calm and serenity. Tonight, permit yourself to drift into a restful sleep. Let us begin this journey together. Footsteps along the stone path. Prologue echoes on the path. The stone path wound its way from the heart of the village toward the old shrine in the hills. Weathered by centuries, each stone carried the mark of countless travelers. Pilgrims with prayers, children chasing each other's laughter, and elders strolling with heavy thoughts. In the evenings, when mist crept low over the ground and the cicadas hushed, the path seemed to remember. A faint rhythm of footsteps lingered even when no one walked, as though the stones themselves still held the echoes of lives long past. Aya had heard those echoes since she was a child, not with her ears, but with her heart a muffled beat beneath the world's silence, guiding her steps. She never spoke of it to others, for fear of sounding strange, yet the path always called her back. On the night of her grandmother's passing, Aya found herself drawn once more to the stone path. Lantern in hand, she stepped beyond the edge of the village, her breath visible in the cool air. The stones were waiting, and as her feet touched them, the echoes stirred. Chapter 1: The Lantern's Companion. The lantern's glow stretched faintly across the stones, casting long shadows where moss crept up from the edges. The path felt alive beneath Aya's sandals, as if each step awakened something sleeping. Her grandmother had always spoken of the path with reverence. "Every stone remembers," she had said once, when Aya was still a child. "When you walk, you do not walk alone. You walk with all those who came before." Now, in the hush of night, Aya understood. The silence was not empty. It was layered like voices speaking so softly they could only be felt. She paused by a larger stone, half sunken and uneven. Placing her hand against it, she felt warmth, faint but undeniable. Closing her eyes, she listened. A sound rose in her mind, the shuffle of sandals, the thud of a walking stick, the low murmur of prayer. She saw, for an instant, the shape of an old man bowing toward the hills, then fading like mist. Aya's breath caught. She opened her eyes, and the path lay empty once more. Yet the warmth lingered, and with it, a strange comfort. She realized then that she was not walking alone. Chapter 2: The Shrine on the Hill. The path curved upward, the stones narrowing as it entered the cedar grove. The air cooled, and Aya's lantern flickered against the trunks. Ahead, the faint outline of the old shrine emerged, its gate leaning, its roof heavy with moss. Aya had not been here since she was small, when her grandmother brought her during the Festival of Lanterns. She remembered the way her grandmother's hands had guided hers as they placed offerings on the worn steps. Now, alone, Aya climbed the final stones. The echoes followed soft, steady footsteps rising in unison with her own. At the shrine's threshold, she paused. The air shimmered faintly, and in the stillness she heard a whisper. Aya. Her lantern wavered. The voice was her grandmother's. Tears stung her eyes as she stepped into the courtyard. The shrine stood weathered but proud, its wooden beams etched with centuries of prayer. The silence here was deeper than along the path, yet not empty. It was a silence that waited, listening. Aya knelt, placing her lantern at the steps. "Grandmother," she whispered, "I'm here." And in reply, the footsteps stirred again, clearer, closer, as though walking beside her. Chapter 3 Stories in Stone. She sat at the shrine until the lantern burned low. The night deepened, and in that silence, the path began to speak. The echoes unfolded not as sounds, but as visions carried in rhythm. A child carrying water jars, stumbling yet determined. A bride walking with her family, tears and laughter mingled on her face. A soldier returning with weary steps, pausing to press his hand to the stones. Her grandmother, younger, walking steadily, her gaze fixed on the shrine. Each vision flickered and faded, like ripples on water. Aya felt them as much as she saw them, each imprint shaping the stones beneath her. And with each vision came a realization: the path was not only a road. It was a vessel, carrying the memory of every life it touched. Her grandmother's voice returned, faint but tender. "Do you see now, Aya? The path is alive because we walk it. And as long as it remembers, none of us are lost." Aya pressed her palms against the stones. For the first time since her grandmother's death, the ache in her chest eased. Chapter 4 The Keeper of Steps. When dawn's light began to filter through the cedars, Aya rose. The path lay before her, stretching back toward the village. She knew now that she could not let it fade. The shrine crumbled, the stones cracked, but the footsteps remained. And if no one remembered to walk, to listen, to honor them, the echoes would vanish. Aya whispered into the morning air, "I'll keep walking." And as she stepped down the path, she felt the rhythm of countless others. Aligning with her own, her grandmother's soft tread, the steady beat of pilgrims, the laughter of children. Each step she took was not hers alone. The path carried her forward, but it also carried them all. Epilogue Footsteps without end. In the years to come, villagers noticed Aya often walking the stone path. Sometimes at dawn, sometimes at dusk, lantern in hand. Children began to follow her, curious at first, then comforted by the strange calm she carried with her. She told them stories not from books, but from the stones themselves. Stories of the people who once walked there, of laughter, tears, vows, and farewells. The villagers began to walk more often, too, until the path no longer seemed forgotten. Offerings returned to the shrine, lanterns glowed along the stones during festivals, and the air filled once more with the rhythm of lives continuing. Aya grew older, but her steps never faltered. And when at last her own time came, the villagers said they still heard her footsteps along the stone path. Steady and clear, walking with all the others who had gone before. The path remained. The footsteps remained. And so did the memory, carried forever in stone. Echoes of the hidden spring. Prologue: the whisper beneath the earth. Beneath the forest that lay beyond the old village, hidden between moss-covered rocks and roots twisted by centuries, there was a spring. Few villagers had ever seen it, and fewer still believed it was real. Yet old stories spoke of its voice, how those who listened carefully could hear echoes rising from its waters, carrying fragments of forgotten time. Aya had grown up with those stories. Her grandmother had told her when she was small, on nights when the rain fell heavily against the roof. "The spring is not only water," her grandmother whispered. "It is memory. It is the earth speaking back to us." As Aya grew older, the tales never left her. She often found herself wandering along the edges of the forest, her heart strangely restless, her ears straining for sounds that weren't there. The villagers warned her away, there's nothing but shadows in that forest, but Aya felt the weight of something waiting. On the evening her grandmother passed away, Aya dreamt of water. She dreamt of ripples spreading outward, carrying voices she could not yet understand. When she awoke, the dream clung to her, urging her feet toward the forest path. Lantern in hand, she stepped into the trees. The air was cool and damp, the silence alive with hidden whispers. Each step carried her deeper until, at last, she heard it, a faint trickle, steady and sure, as though the earth itself was breathing. The hidden spring was waiting. Chapter 1: Into the Forest's Heart. The forest deepened quickly, the canopy closing overhead until Aya's lantern became the only star. Shadows stretched and leaned across the path, and yet she did not feel fear. Instead, she felt recognition, like stepping into a place that had always known her. The sound of water grew clearer. It was not the bold rush of a river nor the scattered drops of rain. It was softer, intimate, like a voice calling just for her. Aya followed the sound until the trees parted into a small clearing. There, half hidden by ferns, the spring revealed itself. Water welled up from between stones and roots, clear as glass, carrying the faintest glow beneath the moonlight. Kneeling by its edge, Aya touched the surface. The chill bit her skin, yet warmth spread through her chest, a contradiction that left her breathless. Then she heard it, not with her ears, but within the stillness of her heart, a murmur, layered and deep, like voices long gone. The words were indistinct, fragments overlapping, laughter, sorrow, prayers, and farewells all flowing through the water. Aya pulled her hand back, startled. The echoes lingered, circling her mind. For the first time, she understood what her grandmother had meant. The spring was memory itself, hidden yet alive. She leaned closer, whispering, "Grandmother, is this you?" The water stirred. Ripples spread outward, and among the murmurs, a single word rose clear. "Aya." Her lantern flame trembled. Tears blurred her sight, yet she did not look away. Chapter 2: The Voices of Water. Aya returned to the spring night after night. Each time, the echoes grew stronger, shaping themselves into clearer words, clearer visions. She saw fragments of the village's past, farmers planting rice in the fields, children running barefoot across the stones, and elders bowing at the shrine. She saw struggles, 2 winters of hunger, storms that swept through the valley, faces bent in grief. But she also saw her grandmother, younger and full of strength, standing at the same spring, her hands pressed against the water as if in prayer. Aya realized then that the spring had always been watching, always listening, always remembering. And now, for reasons she did not yet understand, it had chosen her. One evening, as she sat in silence, a question surfaced in her mind: what will you leave behind, Aya? What will the water carry of you? She had no answer. But the question stayed with her, echoing louder than the voices themselves. Chapter 3: The Keeper of Memory. Word of Aya's nightly visits spread through the village. Some called her foolish, others fearful, yet a few came quietly to her, asking if the spring truly existed. Aya hesitated to share, unsure if the spring wished to be known. One night, when doubt weighed heavily on her, she returned to the water and asked aloud, "Am I meant to guard you? Or to share with you?" The ripples shimmered, and the echoes shifted. She heard her grandmother's voice again, gentle but firm. To guard is to remember. To share is to keep alive. Both are needed. Aya understood. She could not keep the spring only for herself. It was not hers to own, it belonged to all who walked the earth. So, slowly, she began guiding others to the clearing. At first, only children listened wide-eyed to the murmurs. Then the elders, who wept softly as they recognized voices long gone. Eventually, even the skeptical villagers came, and in the glow of the water, their disbelief melted into silence. The hidden spring was no longer hidden. It had become a place where past and present met, where memory was not lost but renewed. Chapter 4: The Echoes Become Her Own. Seasons turned. The spring remained constant, though Aya grew older. She still walked the forest path each evening, lantern in hand, her steps steady on familiar soil. The echoes no longer startled her. They comforted her, reminding her that nothing was ever truly gone. One autumn night, as the mist curled low over the water, Aya pressed her hand to the spring and whispered, "When I am gone, will you remember me too?" The answer came not as words, but as warmth that filled her entire being. And she knew. The spring would hold her, just as it had held her grandmother, just as it would hold countless others. Her footsteps would join the endless echoes, becoming part of the water's eternal voice. Epilogue: The Eternal Song of Water. Years passed, and Aya's name became part of the village's own story. They spoke of the woman who had walked into the forest and found the hidden spring, who had taught them that memory was not something to be feared, but something to be carried. The spring still flows, hidden among moss and stone. Its voice rises in the stillness, carrying laughter, sorrow, prayers, and promises. And among those echoes, one voice is heard most clearly. Aya is steady and kind. She walks still, lantern in hand, along the path into the forest's heart. Her footsteps join the chorus of time, and the water remembers. The hidden spring sings without end. The moonlight touching the pond. Prologue: a silver reflection. In the heart of a forgotten garden, behind walls of ivy and moss, lay a pond. Its surface was still, like polished glass, broken only by the faint stirrings of koi that moved like shadows beneath. By day, the pond seemed ordinary, another relic of a once tended place. But when night fell, and the moon rose high above the cypress trees, the pond transformed. Moonlight did not simply shine upon it, it touched it. It seemed to dip down from the heavens, brushing the surface like fingertips across a mirror. And in that touch, the water shimmered with something otherworldly, as though a door had opened between worlds. The villagers whispered of the pond. They said it remembered every gaze that had ever fallen upon it. Some said it could reveal truths unseen, others that it showed only illusions. But always they ended the story the same way: if the moonlight touches the pond, tread carefully, for it may touch you back. It was in this place, on a summer night, thick with the scent of wisteria, that a young woman named Emiko first saw her reflection stir with more than her own face. Chapter 1: The Garden Gate. Emiko had wandered into the old garden by chance, or so she believed. Her family had moved to the village only weeks before, and curiosity led her beyond the well-worn paths. A stone arch half hidden by vines caught her attention, its weathered gate leaning slightly open. Beyond it, silence waited. Stepping inside, Emiko felt the shift immediately. The air seemed cooler, touched by the faint trickle of unseen water and the scent of wet earth. Lanterns long extinguished hung from wooden posts, and stone lanterns leaned at odd angles among fallen leaves. She followed the path until it ended at the pond. The water gleamed faintly even in twilight, as though it remembered the moon before it had risen. Kneeling at its edge, Emiko peered into the water. Her own face gazed back, framed by strands of loose hair. But something else lingered there, something faint, like the outline of another presence. She blinked, and it vanished. That night, as the moon climbed into the sky, she returned. And when the silver light touched the pond, her reflection was not alone. Chapter 2: A Stranger in the Water. At first, Emiko thought her mind was playing tricks. The face in the pond was near enough to hers in age, yet different, sharper features, eyes older than they should have been. The figure seemed clothed in robes that shimmered faintly, though the water itself was still. "Who are you?" Emiko whispered, though no one stood beside her. The reflection's lips moved, but no sound reached her ears. Only ripples stirred across the surface, carrying silence like a secret. Night after night, she returned, and each time the figure appeared when moonlight touched the pond. Sometimes the stranger smiled faintly, sometimes bowed their head, lifted a hand as if in greeting. Yet the distance between them remained. One evening, Emiko dared to stretch her hand toward the surface. The water was cool beneath her fingertips, but as the ripples spread, the reflection's hand rose to meet hers. For the briefest instant, warmth pulsed through her skin, not the chill of water, but the weight of touch. Emiko gasped and pulled back. The pond stilled. The stranger was gone. Chapter 3: The Keeper of the Pond. The villagers noticed her visits. One elderly woman stopped her in the marketplace, eyes narrowing. "You've been walking where you should not," the woman said. "That pond remembers too much. It keeps what it touches." Emiko asked what she meant, but the woman shook her head, muttering best not to learn. Yet Emiko could not stay away. The pull of the pond was stronger than fear. On the seventh night, she returned with questions heavy on her tongue. As the moonlight brushed the water, the stranger appeared again. This time, their voice reached her not through the air, but within her chest, like an echo of her own heartbeat. "I am the keeper," the voice said. "Bound to the pond as memory is bound to water. You see me because you carry questions. You seek what lies beneath the surface." "Why me?" Emiko asked. "Because you listened." The words sank into her like stones into deep water. For the first time, she felt that the reflection was not simply another face, it was a mirror of something within herself. Chapter 4: The Burden of Memory. Through the following weeks, Emiko learned the nature of the pond. Each night, as moonlight touched its waters, the keeper revealed fragments of the past. A child laughing as they tossed petals onto the water. A warrior kneeling, washing blood from their hands, the pond swallowing their grief. A young woman pressing her reflection close, whispering a prayer that was never heard. The pond remembers all who have touched it, the keeper explained. It holds their joys, their regrets, their silence. I am bound to guide those who come seeking. But why show me these things? Emiko asked. Because memory does not belong only to the past. It shapes the steps you have yet to take. Emiko began to understand. Each vision left her thoughtful, unsettled, as though the pond was not merely showing her the lives of strangers, but asking her what she herself would leave behind. Chapter 5: When Moonlight Fades. One evening, clouds swallowed the moon, and the pond remained dark. Emiko sat at its edge, staring into her reflection alone. For the first time, she realized how deeply she had come to rely on the keeper's presence. She whispered into the darkness, "Will you vanish, too, when the light is gone?" The silence that answered was heavier than words. Yet when the moon returned days later, the keeper's face appeared once more. This time, however, their eyes carried a sorrow Emiko had never seen. "My time here grows thin," the keeper said. "The pond does not hold one memory forever. It releases us, as the seasons release leaves into the river. Soon, my echo will fade." Emiko's chest tightened. "But if you leave, who will remain?" The keeper's gaze softened. Perhaps you. The suggestion struck her like thunder. But as the moonlight trembled across the pond, Emiko understood she had been chosen not simply to witness, but to inherit. Chapter 6 Touch of the Moon, Touch of the Pond. The final night came in autumn, when the air was sharp with the scent of fallen leaves. Emiko returned to the pond knowing what awaited. The keeper stood in the reflection, calm and resolute. "Do you accept what the water offers?" Emiko's hands trembled. She thought of the faces she had seen, the lives the pond preserved, the echoes of laughter and sorrow mingling like ripples. She thought of her own reflection, fragile, fleeting, and of the chance to become part of something greater. "I accept," she whispered. The keeper lifted their hand, and this time Emiko did not pull back. As their palms touched through the surface, moonlight blazed across the water. The pond shimmered, alive with countless voices, countless memories. And then, silence. When the light faded, the reflection was gone. But in the stillness, Emiko felt it, the hum of countless lives within her, the soft weight of memory pressing against her heart. She had become part of the pond's endless song. Epilogue: A silver touch. The garden remains hidden beyond the ivy-covered gate. Villagers speak of it in hushed tones, saying that if you enter on a clear night, you may see a figure at the pond's edge, lantern in hand. Some say it is a young woman, others that it is no one at all, only the pond itself, watching. But always, when the moonlight touches the water, the pond shimmers with something more than reflection. It shimmers with memory, with voices that will never fade. And among them, if you listen closely, is a single whisper, gentle and clear. Emiko. Petals in the gentle breeze. Prologue: The first drift of blossoms. Spring had returned to the village nestled between the hills. With it came the blossom's soft petals unfolding after a long winter's sleep. On the paths, on the river banks, even along the rooftops, the world was covered in a veil of pale pink. And with each breath of wind, the blossoms began their dance. They swirled in spirals, rising and falling, as if carrying with them forgotten whispers of seasons past. In that tender moment, when the first drift of blossoms touched the air, a story stirred, a story of memory, of longing, and of the quiet bonds between hearts. It was here, beneath a great cherry tree standing at the edge of a forgotten shrine, that a young woman named Aiko first paused to listen to what the wind carried. Chapter 1: The Shrine Beneath the Blossoms. The shrine had long been abandoned. Its wooden beams bore the weight of moss, and its stone lanterns leaned with age. But every spring, the great cherry tree that shaded its courtyard bloomed in radiant splendor, as though refusing to let time silence it. Aiko often wandered to this place. She was drawn less by the shrine itself than by the tree whose blossoms seemed to breathe life into the silent stones. On this day, as the wind rose and petals brushed across her shoulders, she heard something faint, fleeting, almost like a sigh. Turning, she saw nothing but air thick with drifting blossoms. Yet the sound lingered, a whisper carried on the breeze. Aiko's heart quickened. She had always believed the wind held voices, though others laughed at the notion. But here, beneath the cherry tree, she felt certain someone, or something, was speaking. Chapter 2: A Voice in the Wind. The following evening, Aiko returned. This time, she carried a lantern, its flame trembling against the twilight. The cherry blossoms glowed faintly in the fading light, and once again the breeze stirred. Petals lifted, spiraled, and in their motion Aiko saw a shape form, a figure traced in the drifting flowers. The voice came clearer now, soft as the rustle of silk. "You can hear me." Aiko's lantern flickered, but she stood firm. "Who are you?" The petals swirled, gathering into the faint outline of a young man. His features shifted like water, never holding steady, yet his eyes were calm. "I am what remains," the voice said. "Bound to the blossoms, carried wherever the wind takes them." "Why me?" Aiko whispered. "Because you listened." Chapter 3: The Petal's Memory. Night after night, Aiko returned to the shrine. The figure in the blossoms revealed fragments of memory, glimpses of laughter. Beneath the tree, of vows whispered beneath its branches, of a parting that had never healed. "This was once my home," the voice told her. "I tended this shrine, cared for its tree. But time unspooled, and when my body fell away, my spirit lingered. The blossoms carried me, and I became their voice." Aiko listened, her heart tightening with each fragment. The spirit had no name left, only echoes of the life he once lived. Yet the bond between them grew, woven by nights of shared silence beneath the drifting petals. Sometimes, Aiko would close her eyes, and the wind would brush her cheek like a hand. Sometimes, when the lantern dimmed, she almost believed the figure stood truly beside her. Chapter 4: Bonds Carried by the Wind. As the days passed, villagers began to notice Aiko's absences. They warned her against wandering to the old shrine. "It is a place of spirits," one elder said. "They linger where they should not. To listen too long is to risk being carried away." But Aiko could not turn away. The spirit's presence had become part of her days, as natural as the blossoms themselves. "Do you fear me?" the voice asked one night. Aiko shook her head. "You are gentle, softer than the breeze." The petals swirled, brushing against her shoulders. "Then will you promise me something? When the blossoms fall for the last time, remember me. Do not let the wind scatter me into silence." Aiko placed her hand against the trunk of the great cherry tree. "I promise." Chapter 5: When the Blossoms Fall. Spring ripened, and with it the blossoms began to fade. The petals fell more heavily now, carpeting the ground in a soft sea of pink. The voice grew weaker. Some nights, Aiko could hardly hear it over the sound of the river. The figure in the blossoms became faint, no more than a flicker at the edge of vision. "Time grows short," the spirit whispered. "Soon the wind will carry me beyond the hills. I will not return." Aiko's chest ached. "You said you would stay." The blossoms whirled, circling her in a final dance. "I stayed as long as I could." But every season must pass. What matters is the promise you will remember. The petals pressed against her hands, warm despite the chill of the night. And then, as the final breath of wind rose, the figure dissolved. The blossoms scattered. The voice was gone. Chapter 6: The Promise of Petals. When spring ended, the cherry tree stood in green silence, its blossoms carried away. The shrine remained as it had been, lonely, weathered, forgotten. But Aiko returned still. She brought fresh water to the shrine's basin, cleared fallen leaves from its steps, and whispered to the tree each time the wind stirred. "Your voice remains," she said softly. "Here, in the petals, in the breeze, in me." Seasons turned. The blossoms returned. And though no figure formed in the petals, Aiko felt the presence all the same, a warmth that lingered, a memory that the wind refused to scatter. Epilogue: The Dance of Blossoms. Years later, villagers spoke of the shrine again. They said a young woman tended it, and each spring the blossoms there bloomed brighter than anywhere else. Some claimed that if you stood beneath the tree on a windy night, you could hear laughter mingled with the petals. Others whispered that the spirit of the shrine had chosen a companion, and together they watched over the place. And always, when the petals danced in the gentle breeze, those who lingered swore they felt something like the brush of a hand, like a promise carried on the wind. For the blossoms fall, and the wind carries them. But memory, when held in the heart, never drifts away. The Sparrow's Song at Dawn. Prologue: The first note in the silence. The village of Hoshimura lay quiet beneath the lingering shadows of night. The fields stretched silver with dew, the thatched rooftops veiled in a cool mist that rose slowly from the earth. All was still, as though the world itself held its breath, waiting for the sun to breach the horizon. And then, a single note. It came light and clear, from the branches of a willow tree at the village's edge. A sparrow, small and unremarkable in form, lifted its voice against the silence. Another note followed, then another, weaving together into a fragile melody. To most, it was nothing more than a bird's song. But to one boy lying awake in his room, a boy named Ren, it was something else entirely. It was a call, soft but insistent, carrying with it the promise of change. Chapter 1: The Boy Who Listened. Ren was 12 when he first heard the sparrow's song as more than mere sound. Others in the village greeted dawn with the crowing of roosters or the rustling of farmers preparing their fields. But Ren lay still, listening. The notes carried a shape, a rhythm unlike the ordinary chatter of birds. They rose and fell like words half-formed, as though meaning lingered just beyond reach. "Why do you always stare out the window at nothing?" his sister teased one morning. Ren only smiled faintly. He could not explain, not yet, that what he heard was not nothing at all. When he finally ventured to the willow tree, the sparrow was there, a small brown bird, plain as dust, its feathers trembling as it sang. But when its black eyes met his, Ren felt as though the song bent closer, weaving directly into him. Chapter 2: The Secret Beneath the Song. As days passed, Wren made a ritual of rising before dawn and walking to the willow. The sparrow was always waiting. One morning, as the first rays lit the horizon, he whispered, "Why do you sing?" To his astonishment, the melody shifted. It was no longer random, but patterned like a reply. His heart leapt. And then, clear as thought, though no voice passed his ears because the world must remember. Wren stumbled back, breath caught. The sparrow continued its song, unbothered, but the words lingered in his mind. The next dawn, he returned. This time, the sparrow's melody told a story of fields long vanished beneath rivers, of names forgotten to time, of a village that once stood where the willow now grew. The bird was no mere creature. It was a memory given wings, carrying voices that otherwise would have been lost. Chapter 3: The Sparrow's Gift. The more Wren listened, the more he understood. Each note held a fragment of the past, the laughter of children running barefoot on soil, the sorrow of mothers waiting by doorways, the chants of priests in long-forgotten shrines. "You hold the voices of everyone who has lived here," Wren whispered. The sparrow tilted its head. "Not hold. Carry. For as long as the dawn comes, so does my song." Wren's heart swelled. Yet with the gift came a burden. The stories were not always gentle. He heard cries of war, the weeping of those who watched fire consume their homes, and the silence of graves unmarked. At times, the song left him trembling. Yet even so, he returned each dawn. To turn away would mean abandoning the voices entrusted to the sparrow's wings. Chapter 4: The Burden of Knowing. Summer deepened, and Wren grew quieter. His friends laughed and played by the river, but he lingered by the willow. His sister noticed. "You're changing. What is it you keep chasing at dawn?" Wren hesitated, torn between keeping the secret and sharing it. In the end, he only said, "I'm listening to something others cannot." She frowned. "That sounds lonely." Lonely, yes. But Wren also felt a strange kinship, as though the sparrow's memories filled a space inside him he had never known was empty. Still, the weight of so many voices pressed heavily on his young shoulders. At night, he dreamed not his own dreams but those of strangers long dead. He woke weary, as if he had lived 100 lives. "Why me?" he asked one dawn, his voice breaking. "Why give this to a boy?" The sparrow's reply came soft, almost tender, "Because you were the one who listened." Chapter 5: The Song and the Promise. The turning of seasons brought autumn winds. Leaves spiraled down, covering the shrine path, and the sparrow's song grew sharper, like a blade drawn from a sheath. One dawn, the sparrow sang of a storm, one that had yet to come. Fields drowned, homes torn apart, villagers scattered. It was not memory, but a warning. Wren's blood chilled. He ran to the elders, trying to explain, but they laughed gently. "Dreams of children are light as petals. Do not worry so." Yet 3 nights later, the storm came. Torrential rain swallowed the fields, the river swelled beyond its banks, and half the village fled to the hills. When dawn broke after the storm, Wren found the willow tree battered but standing. The sparrow sat among its branches, feathers soaked, still singing. "Your song saved them," Wren whispered, tears streaking his face. The bird replied, "Not my song. Yours, because you carried it." In that moment, Wren understood. The sparrow was not only a memory, but a bridge. And he was its chosen keeper. Chapter 6: Dawn's Inheritance. Years passed, and Wren grew taller. His childhood games faded, replaced by the quiet strength of one who bore both past and future. Every dawn, the sparrow sang, and every dawn, Wren listened. He learned to weave the voices into stories he told by firelight, so the villagers came to know the names and lives of those who had walked before them. Children listened wide-eyed. Elders wept softly. And through it all, the sparrow's song wove unseen threads between them, binding one generation to the next. But one morning, the willow stood silent. The sparrow was gone. Wren's chest ached with emptiness. Yet when he closed his eyes, he realized something the song had not left. It was within him now, steady and unbroken, as though the sparrow had passed its wings to his heart. Epilogue: The Sparrow's Dawn. Many years later, when Wren himself had grown old, villagers still spoke of him as the one who carried the dawn's song. Children said that if you woke before the sun and walked to the willow, you might hear it still, a faint melody riding the morning air, carrying voices long gone yet never lost. Some believed it was the sparrow returned. Others said it was Wren himself, his spirit woven into the wind. But all agreed on this: the dawn of Hoshimura was never silent. For as long as someone listened, the sparrow's song would rise again, fragile, fleeting, yet eternal. And in its notes lived not only memory, but the promise that no voice, no life, would ever truly vanish. Reflections on a Quiet Stream. Prologue: The stillness of water. At the edge of a mountain village, hidden behind groves of cedar and winding paths of stone, there lay a stream. So quiet that it seemed less a river than a mirror stretched across the earth. Its waters, shallow yet unclouded, carried little sound. Only the occasional ripple betrayed the presence of passing fish or falling leaves. The villagers spoke of it rarely, though each knew of its presence. They said the stream was older than the village itself, older than even the first shrine that stood in the forest above. At night, the moon rested upon its surface, whole and unbroken, as if it were not sky reflected, but a second sky dwelling within. Some said the stream remembered. That was when you looked deeply enough into its waters, you did not see yourself, but the shadows of what had been lost. And so, few dared linger at its banks, except for one, a young woman named Aki, who often wandered there at dawn, when the world was still unshaken by noise. It was there, by the water's edge, that her story began. Chapter 1: The Girl by the Stream. Aki was 20 when her father passed. leaving her with an old house, a field of withering rice, and silence too large to bear. She did her best to tend to the land, but each evening, when her work was done, she walked toward the stream. The path bent gently between tall grasses and willow trees whose roots reached into the water. Aki sat on the worn stones along the bank, her hands folded in her lap. She did not come for prayer, nor to escape the weight of her days. She came because the stream seemed to listen. When she spoke, her words did not vanish into emptiness. They lingered, like ripples upon the water's face. One morning, as mist clung low to the earth, she whispered, "Do you remember him, too?" The water did not reply. Yet when she leaned closer, she saw not only her reflection, pale and tired, but another, her father's face, faint and wavering. Her breath caught. She closed her eyes, and when she opened them again, the vision was gone. Only the current remained, slow and steady. From then on, she wondered, was the stream merely water, or was it memory given form? Chapter 2 Whispers Beneath the Surface. Aki returned each day, as if drawn by a thread she could not see. Sometimes, she glimpsed nothing but her own shadow. Other times, the water offered images that made her heart tremble, her mother's smile. Though her mother had been gone for 10 years, the shape of a friend she had once quarreled with and never seen again. At first, she thought it was her imagination. Yet the details were too precise: the curve of a hand, the soundless shape of lips forming a word she once knew. She reached into the stream, as though to touch them, but her fingers met only cold water. The reflections broke apart, scattering into ripples. One evening, she asked aloud, "Why show me these things? What am I to do with them?" The willow branches swayed. The current lapped gently at the stones. Then, as if in answer, a small sparrow dipped into the water and rose again, scattering droplets that shimmered in the twilight. Perhaps the stream did not reveal to command, but simply to remind. Chapter 3 The Traveler's Tale. It was in autumn, when red leaves drifted onto the water's skin, that Aki met a traveler. He was older, his cloak heavy with dust, his steps weary. She offered him rest, and he sat beside her on the stones. "You come here often?" he asked, his voice gentle. "Yes," she said. "It helps me remember." The traveler's eyes narrowed, not with doubt but recognition. "Ah, this stream, I once heard stories of it. They say it shows not only the past, but what weighs upon the heart. A reflection of memory, yes, but also of longing." Aki tilted her head. "Do you believe that?" He gazed into the water. For a moment, his shoulders stiffened. A shadow appeared on the surface of a woman with kind eyes, who reached toward him before vanishing into the current. His voice broke when he whispered, "I have no choice but to believe." Aki did not press further. They sat in silence until the traveler rose, bowed, and left with a final glance at the stream. From that day, Aki wondered, was it grief alone the stream revealed, or something more, unfinished threads that bound the living to the lost? Chapter 4 Reflections of the Self. Winter came, and the stream slowed beneath a thin glaze of ice. Aki continued her visits, her breath rising in clouds, her footsteps crunching over frost. She stared long at the water, hoping to see her father again. But instead, another face appeared, her own, not as she was, but older. Lines framed her eyes, her hair streaked silver. The elder version of herself did not look away. She smiled, faintly, and whispered something Aki could not hear. Aki's chest tightened. Was this her future? A life lived alone, waiting always for reflections that could not be touched? That night, she dreamed of the stream. In her dream, the water did not show her the faces of others, but a path, winding endlessly forward. She woke with the weight of understanding the stream was not only memory, but a mirror. It showed not what must be held, but what must be released. Chapter 5 The Decision at Dawn. Spring returned. Blossoms scattered over the surface of the stream, each petal drifting until it vanished into the current. Aki sat beneath the willow and closed her eyes. When she opened them, the water showed her father again. He smiled, warm and familiar. For a long moment, she could not breathe. Then she whispered, "I will not forget. But I must live." The reflection shimmered, blurred, and was gone. Yet this time, she did not weep. She stood, feeling the weight upon her chest lift like morning mist. The stream would always hold its memories. But she would carry them forward, not as anchors, but as seeds for the life yet to be lived. Epilogue The quiet stream endures. Years passed. Aki grew older, her house filled not with silence but with laughter, friends, children, voices that rang brighter than the sound of water. Yet she still visited the stream. Sometimes alone, sometimes with others. And always, the water reflected what was carried in the heart. Some saw parents long gone. Others saw their own regrets. And a few, like Aki, learned to see not only the past, but the gentle truth hidden within that memory, though painful, could be a bridge, not a cage. The stream remained as it always had, quiet, enduring, unbroken. Its waters held the reflections of countless lives, shimmering beneath the gaze of moon and willow. And those who came to its banks left not with answers, but with the courage to continue forward, carrying both loss and hope within them. For the stream did not keep what it showed. It gave it back to those willing to see.